We're in sunny California, and I'm about to take you inside one of the most well-known names in the truck suspension game, Cognito Motorsports. If you've ever wondered about the story behind those high-quality suspension parts and how they got the name Cognito from, you're in for a treat. I'm about to sit with the man behind it all, Justin Lambert, who's going to give us a history of Cognito and how it all started, and answer some of your most asked questions. From humble beginnings to becoming a leader in truck suspension and performance parts, Cognito has built an incredible reputation. And today, we're going behind the scenes to see what makes this company tick and how their products are some of the best on the market.
Started Cognito in a chicken coop in Arroyo Grande. So we're talking 700 foot long building, 50 feet wide, and I had 60 feet of it. So I started with 3,000 square feet, but the reason I was in a chicken coop is because we were talking 17.5 cents a square foot, what I could afford, right? 3-phase power, but it was rough. I mean, it had chicken wire windows, mopped concrete floor, chicken crap in the rafters. I mean, it was kind of nasty. So boarded up all the chicken wire windows, made some that were hinged, and had a pulley mounted. I would use a rope to open the window, tie it off. I mean, that's how you got air to go through the building, but we did welding, machining, we did everything in there, which it was just really me and one other guy. So that's where I started, and you wash my hands in a bucket, use the outhouse down the street, or down the dirt road. When the tubing truck showed up to deliver tubing, I mean, I'm out there unloading it by hand, so didn't have a forklift that could go in the dirt, that kind of stuff. So if you can imagine the inside of it, you've got rafters that are only 8 feet off the ground. So my truck hoist went up and over the rafters, so I would lift a truck right in between the rafters, and that's how we got it done. But it was humble beginnings. But then when it was time for a real shop is when I moved back to Bakersfield, because I pretty much grew up here in Bakersfield. So moved back, got a little bit of help from my parents, moved into a 2,500 square foot shop, and then soon that turned into a second unit, third unit, and then a fifth unit. And so we were in 5 units on 2 different streets. We were, doing what we had to do. It was over off of Art Street, if you remember where that is, Dylan. Then I started drawing up this place and bought the land, got an SBA loan, had it built, moved up, got all under one roof, double the space, double the yard space, all that. After 7 years, decided, hey, we're growing out of this thing. So the lot across the street was empty. So got linked up with SBA again, got another SBA loan and bank loan, and bought that lot across the street, had that building built. So we've been in this building since March of 2013. In that building we moved in November of 2021. So now we're under about 59,000 square feet. So come a long way. I really don't know what happened in the last 20 years. It just seems like it went by like that, but that's kind of how we got here. So obviously took a lot of good employees to help us get there, but we've got around 58 to 60 employees right now. I did just sell the company actually this year. So I don't know if you guys have all heard that news, but I actually sold the company, but really cool kind of opportunity where they weren't looking to come in and replace management or anything like that. They were looking to come in, had a good company, a high-end brand in their portfolio, help them grow, which, I'm not looking to retire, so I want to grow. I want to keep growing. So it seemed like a good opportunity because they're not looking to come in and tell us how to run it. They're looking to come in and assist. So I sort of cashed out, but I own the building, so that's all working nice. So we still have the same leadership team that we've had the last 6 years. Now just the financial responsibility is on someone else's back and not mine, because I was self-funded for all those years, and that's hard to strap when you're trying to grow like this. You're always broke because you're always sinking your money back in. You're growing. So that's kind of how we got here. Now truck stuff, I'll tell you, I kind of fell into truck and SUV products. It wasn't something I grew up doing. I was an engineer. I got a bachelor's of mechanical engineering at Cal Poly in 2000, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but knew that I was always interested in improving things and whatnot. And the suspension thing kind of knocked on my door, so I started designing some parts with another guy. We kind of split ways after that, but I turned it into Cognito Motorsports and just kept going from there. What I am passionate about is building something bitchin', building product that solves problems, products that people are looking for that provide value. That's what I really like doing. Linking up with you, JW, my goal was to help educate some of your audience. You got a good following. You got more of a following, I think, than we do. You got more of a YouTube following than we do on Facebook. So I think a lot of people that are watching your videos, I think we can teach them a lot of stuff. I think I can help teach you guys a lot of stuff, whether you're installing, selling, advising, creating content for people. I think I can help you, and that can also help me, right? So I see, I'll tell you, your friend Weezy reached out to me and said, hey, I got this friend JW, and he's interested in getting a bigger kit and this and that. So I said, well, who's this guy? So I went on YouTube, looked you up, ran across a video that said, I think it was the secrets they don't want to tell you about leveling kits or something like that, right? So I watched that and I went, this guy's, your heart's in the right place and all that. I can teach you some more so you can help people even more, right? So that's why I said, hey, let's get on a phone call. So we got on a phone call, and I think I started educating you a bit, and I think you went, oh, okay. Hey, while I may have some secrets, let's be honest. I mean, any other company can buy my kit and copy it, okay? So I'm going to embellish some secrets that I'm not really afraid to embellish in because my stuff's been copied. Is it copied in full potential? I don't think so. That's why I feel like my stuff still works, better. But, for Cognito to stand out from the copycats, we have to provide service, provide value, and things like that. Part of that value I think I can provide is by educating people so they can make better choices in what they want to put on their truck, who they want to have put on their trucks, to make sure they're going to get value out of the product, the installation, and then the setup, right? There's kind of 3 areas there. You got to have the right product, you got to have the right installation, and you got to have the right setup. So that stuff's very important in having kind of a successful installation. So, that's why I'm sitting here with you guys. And I'm glad you brought everybody else because I think all you guys too will have kind of some questions or maybe a different perception, and maybe I can explain things in another way to help people that are watching, kind of understand some things as well. And Dylan's been in this stuff too, so that'd be a good perspective as well. Questions?
Well, I have some basic questions. So, what does Cognito mean?
Okay, so
and the reason why I ask is that other companies, they use their last name or they use abbreviation of certain words, but I don't know about you guys. I don't know what Cognito means or what it is.
I'll tell you where it came from, and I think you know what it means. You're just not sure.
Okay.
Because you know what incognito means.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of incognito? There is no word that's not in the dictionary though, right? But logically, the opposite of incognito is cognito. So incognito is in the shadows, don't want to be seen. Yeah. Cognito is the opposite of that. Hey, we want to be seen, right? We started building 10-inch lift kits, so we were looking to be seen, right? Okay. So that's where cognito, that's what it means to me. Yeah. That's what it means to me, but where I got the name from was, this is college days before I ever had a company. And me and my buddies, just after a night of partying, of course, in college, I was explaining something to them, and I was looking for a word that was opposite of incognito, and I'm like, I don't know what the word is. Cognito? I'm like, I don't think that's a real word. But that'd be a cool business name if I ever had a business. And so when the business came about, I'm like, Cognito. Oh, Cognito Motorsport. So, and then it just happened to fit with the product that we're involved in and building the trucks and that kind of stuff.
Because it always autocorrects to cognitive. Cognitive related.
Yeah. So that's, I still don't think cognito is in the dictionary, but no, it's not my last name, anything like that. My last name's Lambert. It just kind of happened, and it was there. And then when the business opportunity came about, I snatched it and used that.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah, it worked.
That makes sense. All right, now you're an infamous X design on the hired kits. Where did you come up with that idea?
So that was the very first design. So when I got into building lift kits, FabTech was huge back then. Still a big company now, but FabTech was what you would see everywhere, and ProComp as well, and some others. But everyone's doing 6-inch lift kits. That was what you had, 6-inch lift kits, and if you wanted to go taller, you had to add a 3-inch body lift, right? So I decided, okay, we want to build a 10-inch lift kit. You don't need a body lift. We're going to go big. People want to run big tires. Let's just do this. So that's what we built. And having the engineering mind and education, I'm looking at, okay, do I want this big, bulky sheet metal crossmember that I just didn't find very appealing? So I'm sketching different ideas. I come up with, okay, well, triangulation wise, hey, we can do this. Hey, nobody's doing anything like that. I think it looks really clean, looks really sleek. That's where that tubular X design came from. And then as we started building shorter kits, like the 4-inch lift kits, we had to go to the sheet metal subframe type. But the bigger kits, you can see them coming down the road. Yeah. They got, the X and so that's where that came about. It was purely just wanting to build something different, but also using engineering practices and triangulation and support and that kind of stuff. That's where it came from.
Do you recommend cutting out the service perch? Why is that when other companies don't require it? And most of the installers, we kind of had an idea that upper control arms, aftermarket ones, is so you don't have to cut it.
Okay. So the question you're asking is why cut the service perch, basically. But there's so much more ahead of that causes needing to cut the service perch that I'm going to have to go back a little bit and start from scratch here, okay? So how do we get a good ride out of a truck? And I'll give you an example. We could sell 2 different guys the same exact leveling kit, and they may have 2 different ideas of what wheel and tire they want to run. Guy goes along my guidelines, and I'm just going to use like a new Chevy HD, for example. Those are easy to put 35s on. If we recommend, hey, run a 9-inch wide wheel, 0 offset, 35-inch tire, minimal trimming, good to go. That guy with that leveling kit's going to be completely happy if he followed our instructions, or whoever installed it followed the instructions. They set the droop travel at a minimum of 3 inches, like we recommend. That guy's completely happy. Then you're going to have another guy that bought the same exact leveling kit, but put 12 or 14 wides on it, and they're having a problem with the tire rubbing the fender when they turn, right? So they start going up more. Pretty soon they end up with a 1/2 or 1 inch of droop travel. The truck's trying to ride like crap. So you got 2 guys that bought the exact same kit, that one is completely happy and like, wow, it rides better than stock, and the other guy's not happy, right? He might be happy with the way it looks, but with the way it rides and him going through ball joints and stuff like that, he's not happy. And who gets blamed for it? We do, which is unfortunate. So if you've noticed in our instructions and on any kind of interviews I've done, I harp on 3 things. There's 3 things to make sure you get the right quality that you should have. It's droop travel, quality of shock, and the quality of the tire. There's 3 things, okay? You need those 3 materials or products to make sure you're going to have success. But that isn't all you need. You also need a proper installation, and you need a proper setup. Okay, the setup is related to how much droop travel you got, right? Because obviously we can adjust torsion bars and whatnot to change ride height, but what a lot of people don't realize is when you crank up torsion bars, you're converting droop travel into ride height. Okay, so I'm gonna give you an example. And sorry, this is a long explanation, but there's a lot to it. If we take a stock new HD truck, okay, right off the lot, standard model, not an AT4X or ZR2 2500, standard model. I bring it in here, I measure it, it's got 3 1/4 to 3 1/2 inches of droop travel stock, okay? If we add our shocks, we add our control arms, we can get an additional 2 1/2 inches of droop travel, okay? So if we had 3 1/2, we added 2 1/2, now I got 6 inches of droop travel. To go up 3, how am I going to do that? I got to convert 3 inches of that droop travel, that 6 inches of droop travel, I got to convert that into ride height by putting in torsion keys and turning up the torsion bars, right? So now I got 3 inches of lift and I still have 3 inches of droop travel. Now if I try and get 5 inches of lift and I only end up with 1 inch of droop travel, it's just not going to work right. And that's what people do sometimes to try and clear tires without doing any trimming. You have to do some trimming. Like, a lot of the trimming is simple inner fender liner stuff, and some people just don't quite get that, and so they just keep turning torsion bars up, and then it rides like crap, and then they're like, well, this is not what I wanted. So very important to have someone do an install and a setup that understands and knows what they're doing. And the reason why I want to explain this stuff is because it helps my company If I have dealers and installers that understand this stuff, because they're going to have a better ratio of happy customers, which is going to in turn help us, sell more product. Why do we have to trim the service perch? Okay, so by adding that 2.5 inches of droop travel, that upper control arm has to come down at more of an angle. That's simply why. If we were going to go up and over the service perch, a sheet metal control arm would look funny. We do make a tubular control arm that does go up and over the service perch. That is all bolt in, you don't have to cut anything. But nobody wants tubular arms these days. They all want box sheet metal arms. A reason why you want to cut the service perch, another reason is your droop limiter, okay, meaning your droop stop, what's your droop stop? What's controlling droop stop? No, shock. On a stock truck, okay, let's think stock truck. Your shock is in there controlling how far the suspension can droop, okay? If you put a longer shock in there and now your control arm is hitting the perch, what's your droop stop limiter? Your control arm. Upper ball joint is not meant to be pulled apart like that. That's a big problem. That's why you got to get the service perch out of the way so you can let the shock do its job and be the droop limiter, okay? Now, if there are other companies that they have a sheet metal arm and they don't require cutting the service perch, it's because they're not putting a long enough shock in there to provide you with the most droop travel available. Now, you can't just keep putting longer and longer and longer shocks in it, because you're going to bind lower ball joint, CD axle, tie rod, upper ball joint. You're going to do all these things. There's a sweet spot in how long of a shock you can get. There's a sweet spot. You want to get the max length shock you can without going too far. And there's some nuance in that too, because a lot of people will literally just put a truck on the rack and droop it out until they realize, okay, the ball joint is binding right here, I can't go any further. And they don't turn the tire, okay? These newer trucks, we have what is called a kingpin axis. So if you draw a line between the upper ball joint and the lower ball joint, that's a kingpin axis, okay? Ball joint stud, though, on the older trucks was in line with the lower ball joint stud, all in line. But nowadays, they take that upper ball joint and they turn it like this. So the ball center, which is important for geometry, the ball center to ball center is still your kingpin axis. But when that spindle turns, so does that ball joint. And the angle gets greater. So we have to make sure we don't put too long of a shock that makes the upper ball joint happy when your tires are straight, but binds when you're turning at full droop. Okay, so these are all nuances that I think a lot of companies that are building this stuff don't realize. Mm-hmm. So we're maximizing the length of shock we can use by evaluating how the suspension moves and taking into account all angles of steering and whatnot. The older trucks, like I say, the ball joint angle did not change through the steering cycle at full droop. They do now. A reason why they changed that ball joint pin is to give more room for the tire. In order to get the droop travel we want, we've got that longer shock. Now we need to correct ball joint angle, okay? Because a ball joint is only going to articulate so far. Let's just say stock ball joint is 31 degree articulation angle. Well, we can go up to a 34 degree, so our ball joints are a 34 degree articulation angle. But in order to accommodate all that droop that's available, we got to turn that ball joint a little bit more. So we got to maximize the ball joint angle so that we don't bind at full droop and we don't bind at full bump, full compression, right? Having all that opportunity there, do we leave a service perch in place and let the arm hit it and then restrict our droop travel? Or do we go ahead and cut it, get it out of the way, let the shock do its job of restraining the droop, being the droop limiter, and now the service perch is just out of the question. Now our control arm has basically no stress on it. The upper ball joint has very little stress on it. Everything is just much happier, and that's the way it's supposed to work. Back in the day, people didn't realize this, and we were hanging, you were using your upper arm as the droop limiter. But ball joints were a little different back then. You had metal on metal ball joints. They were a little stronger on the pull-out force. Well, nowadays, all your vehicles are using the shock for the droop limiter, so they're using maintenance-free ball joints that have a plastic liner. They don't have a lot of pull-out force. Well, we don't need a lot of pull-out force unless you don't cut that service perch off and you let the A-arm hit it. So you're going to beat up your A-arm and you're going to kill the upper ball joint. Long story short.
What do you think determines the ride quality? So the reason why I ask is leveling kits have a really bad reputation for, especially on the forums. People say don't do leveling kit, just do a 4-inch kit and set it as low as possible.
Okay, so if a leveling kit, okay, so ride quality, again, based on correct product. And when I say correct product, I mean you gotta have a control arm that has proper geometry, like we add a little bit of caster in our control arms. So you got a control arm that has proper geometry, maybe a little more caster, but corrected ball joint angle and high angle ball joint, okay? That's correct product. The correct length shock, that's correct product. Correct valve shock, correct product, right? So you gotta have a correct product, then you gotta have that shock, you gotta have an installation that is accurate, meaning they didn't put the left control arm on the right side and the right side on the left side. You do that with a control arm that is not the same left and right. You know, like I say, we're adding caster, so our ball joint, you know, if we have this control arm, our ball joint is not centered. We're to the rearward a little bit. So if installer puts, you know, driver side control arm or passenger side, caster's going to be down. Truck isn't going to necessarily want to go straight down the road, and then the alignment shop's going to be going, hey, why can't I align this truck? So you got to have that stuff proper. Believe it or not, we had a shop put in a control arm upside down.
Upside down.
Okay, so you'll notice that we're going to a lot of press-in ball joints. Okay, it's starting to get away from bolt-in ball joints. That shop had a kit with a bolt-in ball joint, and this poor customer, she had a previous vehicle, had that shop installed, Cognito product, completely happy. Gets a new vehicle, has the same shop install it. He's like, and she calls going, I don't understand why I keep breaking ball joints. We're like, can you send some photos, please? Tubing control arm literally upside down. So imagine the ball joint angle. It's completely wrong, and that's why they were breaking ball joints.
That takes some talent.
So, the guy must have been asleep when he installed it. So you got to have the correct installation. And then you got to have the correct setup. Setup meaning set the right height properly. And when we say you need a minimum of 3 inches of droop travel, that is a minimum number in order to maintain proper ride quality, okay? If you have 2.5, it's only a half an inch, it makes a difference. It does make a difference. Now, when you're talking lift kit, a lot of times a guy will install, let's say, just a 4-inch lift kit, and they didn't turn it up real high because they didn't need to. Well, what happened? They ended up with a bunch of droop travel. So it rode good. Yeah. So they ended up with 3 or more inches of droop travel. So that's why a lot of people will say, hey, no, the lift kit's going to ride better. Now, I'll say, if you have a lift kit with 4 inches of droop travel, is it going to ride better than a leveling kit with 3 inches of droop travel? Yes. If you can use that extra inch of droop travel.
Right. But what about tightening up the torsion bars? Does that make a big difference in ride quality?
Only if you run out of droop travel.
Only if you run out. Okay.
So if you think about, if you turn up a torsion bar, okay, so we've got this bar and we're turning one end by adjusting the torsion keys. Is the other end turning? It is.
Yeah.
Because it pushed the A-arm down more.
Yeah.
Okay. So we didn't create any more stress in that bar. Now if we keep turning that torsion bar via the adjuster, but we have no more droop travel because the shock is fully extended, is this end going to turn then? No. So now you just have more force acting against the ground, tire to the ground. You have more force than you had before. So now it's not going to ride good.
We thought it was like tightening the tension of it.
No, you're just literally taking this torsion bar and rotating it like that. Okay. Now if you run out of droop travel, now you're rotating this and you got more tension in that bar.
So how does your soft ride torsion bars work?
They're just a lower rate, lower spring rate. So if you think about a coilover shock, okay, so you have a coil spring, okay, that wire, okay, that's a wire coiled, okay. I mean, it might be a big wire, but it's coiled. A torsion bar is also a wire. It's just not coiled, it's straight. But that coil spring, that coil is just in tension. It's actually twisting. So you think of it like it's going this way, but that is not what's holding the spring rate really, okay? It's that wire that's just coiled around. It's actually twisting, just like a torsion bar is. It's just in a different shape, coil shape versus a bar shape, okay? So if you think about a truck with a coilover, like a half-ton Chevy, let's say, 4 inches of droop travel, and we want to raise ride height. Well, if we bring preload nut down to preload the spring more, if we bring that preload nut down a half an inch, but the length of the shock grows a half an inch, did I increase spring tension? No. We literally just set the right height at a different spot. Now, If the shock was already fully extended and you had no droop travel on the truck and you tighten that, your ride's going to get stiffer. Okay? It's the same with torsion bars. It's just people don't associate it with, well, that's a bar, it works completely different. It gets adjusted completely different, but the mechanism there really is the same. You're twisting a spring, a bar spring, right? Versus twisting a spring that's in the shape of a coil. You're still twisting that material. So, like the video I watched, the leveling kit video that when I first, became familiar with you, it was installed at your shop, I believe. So, like, I'll not to pick things apart, but so I watched you guys set the truck down and then get the measuring tape out and measure. Okay. Well, what happened when you drove away?
Yeah,
completely changed.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where, as well as you have to be aware that, okay, I got to go settle this truck. So when we install a kit here, we set the thing on the ground, we make sure tires aren't going to tear anything up, the alignment's pretty good. I literally take it out, go through the gutter a few times, bring it back in slowly, pull it in straight. I don't pull it in too far and then back up, because if alignment is off and you back up, caster will want to raise the front of the truck. Okay. So I always pull it in straight and slowly and stop nicely. I easily step out of the truck, then I get my tape measure and start measuring. Okay. Now your suspension is settled, right? And then you can start measuring, checking ride height left to right, front to back, check your droop travel, that kind of stuff. So, a lot of people don't understand how to check droop travel. I mean, it's really easy. Some people overthink it, but it's as simple as this. The truck's in the air, hoisted up by the frame. Install the suspension kit, shocks, all good. We put the tires back on it, and I literally just measure top of tire to fender well. Okay, that's at full droop. Okay, now let's say I have 13 inches. When I set it on the ground and I go settle the suspension, I pull it back in, I want 10 inches. That's 3 inches of droop travel. Okay, so if my ride height, that gap top of tire to fender well is 10, at full droop it was 13, that's 3 inches of droop travel. It's as simple as that.
That's pretty easy.
Super simple, right? Sometimes you'll get people that are like, okay, well, I measured from fender well to the ground, and then I measured to the center butt. No, just top of tire to fender well. It's very easy. So if I don't have a wheel and tire yet that's going to go on the truck, and I still have the stock wheels and tires, I'll just put the stock wheels and tires on it. It's just relative to the size of the tire. So if I put the stock wheels and tires back on that thing and I measure the same thing, I might be 15 inches, and then at ride height I might be 12 inches. But when I go put the new tires on there, I know I still have 3 inches of droop travel. The same questions, I think you would get not even close to the same technical answers. Okay. I just don't think that most people understand this stuff like I do, just because of how much I care about what I'm building and making my customers happy. Wanting to do that and have a crew of people here under this company that want to be proud of what they're building, shipping, selling, involved in. I just feel like I've built a brand that is a step above the rest in that aspect, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to share this information. They're going to see it. Are they going to use it and understand it? They can. Are they going to spend the time to do it? I doubt it. We're all busy, right? Everybody's busy trying to pay taxes and just stay afloat. That's why I'm sharing this information with the public, essentially, so that they can understand and make better choices. Whether they go with Cognito or another brand, that's up to them. It's their money. But if I give them enough value, I feel like people will give me the value back, because our intentions are to deliver a quality product that has ingenuity, technical aspects involved, gives them performance, and as long as they follow the guidelines that we set, they're going to be extremely happy.
I got a question. The time when you see your lifts going down like a freeway, 90% of the time I could tell it's a Cognito lift. Purposely, because it sits a lot wider, in my opinion, from looking at it, than other lifts.
Wider where?
In the front end, like the geometry itself. I see the CV axle spacers are a bit thicker than most lifts. The geometries look also straighter with how tall they are. Why is that? Like, why are you guys so much wider than other lifts, or why does it look like that?
Okay.
Purpose? I
started in 01, so we'll say 01. So in the 2000s, there was not many spindle kits out there, meaning lift kits that had a replacement knuckle. Everybody was dropping upper control arm down. Okay, so you're keeping stock height knuckle. The problem is when you keep a stock height knuckle, your upper arm and your lower arm are the stock distance apart, but you're adding this massive tire. Your tire has so much more leverage over those joints and those control arms now. Okay. Now, while alignment shops liked it because they had a ton of adjustability to get their alignment set, they loved it. The problem is they were easy to knock out of alignment. They'd wear out upper ball joints faster and all those things. Then you had some of the bigger brands back then start going to spindle kits. I believe they were doing it for ease of installation. And also a spindle, I think they probably were getting made a little bit less expensive than these weldments where it dropped the upper control arm down. So maybe it was, a convenience factor plus an easier installation. But when I started sitting down and running the engineering on the loads and whatnot, I realized, damn, that upper ball joint just got way stronger, and now you're holding alignment way better. That's when I started getting into spindle kits. Okay, what I didn't want to do, and if you remember, back in the day, that one of the most popular kits was a FabTech 8-inch kit, and the tire's way out. And years down the road, they ended up building another kit that was narrower. But the goal was you didn't want to change caster. Earlier I was talking about that kingpin angle. And again, if you're looking from the front of the truck, looking at, let's say, one tire. So I'm standing at the front of the truck, here's a tire, control arm. Kingpin angle is that line from upper ball joint to lower ball joint, okay? If you decrease that angle just by sucking in that wheel, you're dropping caster, okay? You got to understand what caster does. When you're pushing a shopping cart, what keeps it wanting to go straight? That's caster in those rear wheels on the shopping cart, right? The caster, the wheels are laid back, they want to go straight. So when you pull a cart back, the wheels do a 180 and they flip around, right? Mm-hmm. Caster is what helps that truck go straight down the freeway. Have enough caster, the truck can be wandering, squirrely, a little stuff like that. You got to have, a minimum amount of caster. Shorter wheelbase trucks need more caster than long wheelbase trucks. The longer your wheelbase, the straighter that truck wants to go. So what we were doing back then was we wanted to keep stock, as much of the stock caster as we could. So we were maintaining that angle. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens? This lower control arm down to here, and I want to keep stock caster. Remember, this arm is still in the stock location. I'm putting a taller knuckle in there. How the track width got wider. So the taller I go, that's 4-inch kit. This is 10-inch kit. So look, see? So that's your track width difference. That's your front cross member. You'll see the stock bolts, and then where the control arm now mounts are a little wider. That's all that. Nowadays, we don't do it that way anymore, except on the big kits, the 7s and the 10s. So like the HDs, 2020 and up, 2024s, our 7-inch kit and 10-inch kits still stick the tires out. You need it on that big of a truck. Your center of gravity is that much higher. You need the stability. Yeah. You need to be wider. Not only do you need to be wider, you should have a stiffer sway bar, which we sell the sway bars as well. But that's why. So in order not to do that, what do you got to do? You have to decrease that kingpin angle, which actually reduces caster as well. So caster comes from two things: kingpin angle and also caster angle, which is when you're adjusting upper control arm and the arm can go forward and backward. Mm-hmm. As you're adjusting the two eccentrics in or out. That's caster as well. But the taller this gets, so the bigger the lift kit, the less effect on caster that upper arm has. So that's where you need to keep this in. You got to widen it. But on our 4-inch kits, we're only widening the track width like 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch. So on 2020, 2024, 4-inch kit, we literally only widened it enough to square up the rear track width and the front track. So if you're seeing anything that wide, it's an older truck. Or it's a real big lift kit.
Yeah, or a big lift kit. Yeah. So the reason I brought it up and I was asking is, so the two best trucks I ever ridden were actually your kit. That was Wheezy's.
Okay.
When he gave it the first time. Yeah, big dually. Yeah. That truck rode really good. And then a Wesley Spinner. It was a 1500. My pops grew up doing lift kits and stuff like that. So I seen him put your kit through beatings, like brutal beatings. And that kit took it, no problem. And this is another question I wanted to ask. because I've seen other lift kits go through half of what that beating on your kit went through, and welds breaking. Or I've seen the cross members come apart at the weld. And I was trying to figure that out because no one could ever explain that to me of what's the different type of welds that you're doing compared to other people to be able to keep that strength.
I have to see the break, and I'm not going to say that we've never had a weld crack because it happens, but you learn what happened and then you make a change and fix it, right? That's, learning from mistakes, right? But like a lot of times, let's just say we have, and I'm not an artist, but I'll do my best. But if we have a pocket here and there's a plate, and we have this weld seam that comes down here like this, and we stop. There's a point right here, let's just say this is a pocket, and this is where a control arm bolt goes, okay, and you got a control arm coming out. We wrap the weld underneath and go up the other side a little bit. It helps mitigate a crack starting right at the end of that weld. So you take the weld and you wrap it and go underneath the other side. Just imagine I'm drawing on the inside now, and you just go up and stitch it up a little bit. So that makes a big difference. If you just weld the outside and stop right there, depending on what part it is and what loads are on it, it can start a crack right at the bottom and it'll just propagate.
So truthfully, from what I'm seeing, is you guys just take a lot of time to really like mitigate the issues that you foresee happening.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not going to say we've never had any. I saw one the other day. Customer emailed in, 15-year-old truck, old truck. He's like, hey, my cross member's cracked. Well, that was before we realized, hey, we need to wrap underneath. So he had an older cross member. He wanted to take it off and send it in for repair because we don't make it anymore. It's a 10-inch kit. We could talk about why we don't make them anymore. But he wanted to say, we'll repair it, no problem. You cover the freight, I'll repair it for free, no problem. But if I was you, I wouldn't spend the time to take that cross member off the truck. I'd just get a welder buddy, buff some powder coat off, weld it right there, paint it, and go. I mean, your truck's 15 years old,
Yeah.
So I don't think I put the labor in, but up to him. I offered.
Do you think you'll ever create a coilover kit for the Chevys?
Talked about it. We've talked about it, and there's another company or maybe two that are doing it. There are problems that I see, okay? For one, we already have an issue. There are some really good installers, and then there are some installers that just aren't good. I'm just gonna say it, they're not good. They're in it for the money. They're not in it to do the best job they can and take care of the customer. Those shops are the ones that scare me, because if you take an HD that is a torsion bar truck and then you convert it to a coilover truck, first of all, that shock bucket is not meant to carry the load of the truck. That is not a coilover bucket, that's a shock bucket, which means it needs extensive bracing in order to make it strong enough. That's going to require welding, okay? If that is not done right and that stuff breaks apart and that customer has a problem, that truck crashes and somebody gets hurt, there's a lot of liability there, right? So I'm a little on the fence of going that far. Would I like to? Yes. I think it'd be a really neat upgrade for the people that are willing to spend the money on that and kind of set something apart. But that's the reason we're not doing it right now. The other kits that are out there, I mean, the other thing is you got to look at, okay, how many can I sell? Mm-hmm. It's got to be worth it. If you're going to sell 12 a year, one a month, you have to go, okay, is it worth making 12 and then having sit on the shelf until next month, and that goes to 10, and then the next month, you know what I mean?
No.
When you have stuff sitting on the shelf, it costs money. And that's exactly why we stopped making the big kits for the half tons. They weren't selling. You've got 10 to 12 a year that you're selling, and do I take the production resource from out here and take a week and focus on building 12, 10-inch kits for a half ton that we're going to sit on? Or do I focus on taking care of the big demand, which is the newer vehicles? So that's what we decided we had to do. During the pandemic, we had $3.5 million back order. Do we focus on the stuff that doesn't move, or do we take care of the customers who have already spent their money and are looking for product? That's where we said, okay, we have to focus our efforts, and that's how the company really grew through those times.
But then I also found out that you have the Pitman Arm and Idle Arm support brackets. Will you guys be coming out with possibly your own idle arm and Pitman arm setup for us, like for the off-road community and also like drag racing community. Almost like kryptonite, but Cognito.
So if I told you you added my Pitman and Idler arm support and it did a better job of just a bigger, beefier Pitman and Idler arm, why would you want a bigger and beefier Pitman and Idler arm? People are listening to others on forums. Some shops just want to sell more, sling more metal. If I want to bring value to a customer, is that value in slinging more steel, meaning selling them more metal, or is it putting together the proper setup to give them the most bang for their buck? Okay, I want to deliver value. So we've got a Pitman and Idler arm support kit that you can add on to a stock Pitman and Idler arm, or an aftermarket stock replacement that solves the issue. If I were going to build a Cognito Pitman and Idler arm, what I do is incorporate the Pitman and Idler arm support kit in it. Why would I do that when we are already building and selling 10,000 a year? I should just focus my efforts on making sure that's the best product it can be and solves the people's problems, put some effort into marketing. Do I go, hey, okay, but for twice the money you can buy this new Pitman and Idler arm, and it hasn't incorporated, but it's twice the money.
Yeah.
Okay, this is, these are $600 where you can just buy this for $260. Well, how many of those am I going to sell if I'm being honest? Mm-hmm. If I'm being honest and I'm telling them you don't need this, but you do need this, and it's cheaper, what are they going to buy?
The cheaper product.
They're going to, because it does the same job, right?
So this is another forum thing that I brought up. So you're saying that if we bolt Pitman and Idler arm support brackets, and I do a 4-wheel drive launch, will they support it? Like hold it?
Pitman and Idler arm support brackets will. So now let me back up a little bit. I've never done a 4-wheel drive high boost launch. Okay. I'm not in drag racing. Can't say that I have any customers personally that are in drag racing doing that stuff. Is that what you guys are doing? Or
yes, sir. We're not officially, but okay. His truck's 1,400 horsepower in your parking lot.
That's legit. Yeah. I'm game to try it out and see. Will the Pitman and Idler arm hold up? Will the Pitman and Idler arm support kit hold up? I'm pretty sure the support kit won't have a problem. Will the Pitman and Idler? I don't think it will, but I don't know. I have seen broken Pitman arms before, where you have the stud that comes out of the Pitman arms to the Centerlink. Mm-hmm. I've seen those break on trucks that don't have our support kit and that do have our support kit. I had one customer that called me personally and told me, "You saved my sister's life." I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, "Here's some photos. Look at this brake." It was they had an aftermarket Pitman and Idler arm on it, okay? Factory replacement, not one of these big beefy ones, more replacement that you buy at auto parts store. I won't say the brand. The stud broke on the big end of the taper on the upper side of the Centerlink. So you have, this is Centerlink bar, you got arm, and then you have stud and threads, right?
Yes, sir.
It broke right here. You can't steer when it breaks right there. Pitman support kit held it together and she didn't crash her truck. You've got an Idler arm. So that Pitman arm obviously is connected to a steering box, and when you turn the steering wheel, it's turning that. So all it's doing is this, okay? So that joint coming out of the Pitman arm is just supposed to spin on axis.
It's not supposed to go back and forth.
It's not supposed to do this, not supposed to do that. The reason it doesn't do that is because it has the Idler arm, okay? But this way, it doesn't have any support. Okay, so what happens is that joint in the Pitman arm and the one in the Idler arm start getting loose, and it allows the Centerlink to swing forward and backward. That changes your toe because your drag link or Centerlink is pivoting, connected to your tie rods, connected to your spindles and your wheels. So as that thing pivots, now it pulls on the tie rod, and now you can't control your toe setting on your truck. You're going to get premature tire wear, more tire cupping than normal. Front tires are going to cup because they're steer tires. Your front tires are steering. They're going to cup. That's why we rotate, right? And burnouts. But
I didn't want to say it.
If you don't have control of the toe, they're going to cup worse. So we're actually helping reduce tire wear in the front tires with the Pitman Arm Support Kit. It actually saves a little bit of fuel. I actually had a fleet of trucks, a customer with a fleet of trucks. They collected data, and they saw an increase in fuel mileage. Now, I'm not going to say it was a mile a gallon. It wasn't. But you're talking 1/10 of a mile a gallon.
Still something.
For a fleet that tracks their expenses, that was big to them. They're like, this paid for itself in 2 months. So for them, it was amazing. So Pitman Arm Support Kit, believe it or not, I designed that in a day. Back in,
In a day.
Yeah, like the concept. I mean, if you want to hear the story, I was working on Doug DeBerti's. If you guys remember Trends, you guys are pretty young, so I don't know if you remember Trends. They billet components, billet steering wheels, billet pedals, billet mirrors. I mean, they were big in the 2000s, right? So we built his SEMA truck, and this was, I think, in 08 or something like that. We built the SEMA truck, and he was here in Bakersfield. And we finished building the truck, and he's like, okay, it's got to go over to here, so I'm going to send a tow truck for it. So he sends a flatbed tow truck, and tow truck pulls up, the bed comes down on the tow truck like this. I pulled the lifted truck. It was, 12 inches of lift, 40s, it was a new HD back then. I pull it up to tow truck, he hooks up, he starts winching the truck up. As the front tires hit the bed of the truck, because I'm sitting there watching, all of a sudden the tires go in like this in the front. I'm like, what? Did I leave something loose? Like, what is going on? And the truck is going up the bed. Here's the bed of the tow truck. The truck's going up the bed. The tires are towed in like crazy. And I'm looking at the steering, going, what is bending? What's going on? And I saw, and then as soon as the rear tires hit, it relieved the pressure on the fronts, and they went back straight. And I went, that's crazy. So I went, whoa. So I saw what was moving, and I was like, huh. And that was that. Well, then, after SEMA, that winter, DeBerti had a house up in Big Bear, so they were heading up there, and it starts snowing. So they're caravanning, and that SEMA truck was behind, and they all stop, lock into four-wheel drive, because they're going up to Big Bear, and it's starting to snow, so they lock into four-wheel drive. Doug looks at the rearview mirror, and the tires are towed in like crazy, because now he's got load on the front tires. He calls me, he goes, Justin, like, I don't know what's going on, but the tires are towed in like crazy. Like, we just stopped to lock in four-wheel drive, and now the tires are towed in. Mm-hmm. And so instantly I knew what it was. It was the same thing I saw on the tow truck. And so I said, okay, when you get back, I want that, can I have that truck for a few days? Yep. But when it came back, I started looking, and I went, okay, I could do this. I could secure it here, it pivots here, I create here, this just needs to pivot. I literally built a prototype the next day, and it worked. Okay.
It was a beautiful prototype.
I built just out of strap, and welded some stuff, a heim joint, cut the thread short, all this stuff, and it worked. And then that's how that product has evolved from there. I mean, now we have forged brackets and custom heim joint. I mean, it's,
the heims are,
it's a really nice, not sheet metal brackets anymore. So I've got a lot invested in it, but when you have a product that's patented like that and protected, it makes sense to make it the best you can. And,
yeah, because you guys are the only ones doing that.
Because I got a utility patent on it.
I used to see Kryptonite sell it as a package.
That was ours. Yeah. And I don't know if I don't know that they are, but I think DMAX store sells it. And I got a lot of retailers. Like I said, we're moving 10,000 plus of those annually. It should be more. And as people understand more, I mean, you guys are in the business,
yeah.
and you really don't know what it. You're just learning about what it really does and why. The more people that we can get to understand that, they should be putting them on their stock trucks.
Yeah. I recommend them all the time.
Right. And there's a point where I tried to sell this to Federal Mogul. Federal Mogul makes Moog. Moog Problem Solver. Well, their Pitman Idler arms don't solve the problem. We still got the same problem.
Yeah.
Mine solves the problem. The Cognito Pitman Idler Arm Support Kit solves the problem. So back in 2010, I was approaching Federal Mogul trying to sell them my patent or license it or whatnot. And I just got the old school engineer. If it wasn't his idea, it wasn't a good idea. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. So I thought, well, I'm just going to have to go all in, and I got to sell this myself. But this facility and our other facility across. I mean, that if I didn't have that Pitman Idler Support Kit, if I didn't invent that, we wouldn't be here. I mean, that's changed.
That was the game changer.
Yeah. I mean, it's got good profits for us. It's a need. It has value. I mean, it pays for itself, like I say, in alignments. I mean, if you don't have that, and you have a truck with 20,000 miles on it, let's say, you can get a front end alignment, drive the truck around the block, put it back on the alignment rack, and the alignment will not be the same. The toe will not be the same. Camber and caster will, but toe will not be the same. You cannot hold a toe setting. You add this on, now you can hold a toe. When you're doing a four-wheel drive, high boost launch or whatnot, I mean, you guys probably already know this from trial and error.
Oh yeah.
But you don't want the front end up. You don't want the front cranked up. You want the tie rods as flat as possible.
100%. I always turn down the keys when I do
Right.
my launch.
Because you want that tie rod as flat with the Centerlink as possible. That way, when that torque going through those front tires, which is pushing on the tie rods, it's just pushing straight in a line.
And it's not coming up at
Yeah, if
me.
those tie rods are at an angle because you turn up torsion bars a little bit, that torque is not only it's gonna lift your front end of your truck when you apply the boost, it is going to put so much torque on those Pitman and idler arms that it's insane, especially with 1,400 horsepower or foot-pounds of torque.
No, 4 horsepower.
Holy, I mean, yeah, that's
Dylan
nuts.
just finished it.
So yeah, you know when you're doing that kind of stuff, you know, 4-wheel drive drag racing in these trucks or you know boosted launches, you got to have the tie rod straight.
So I'm definitely gonna make a video 4-wheel drive launching with your brackets. I got you.
Yeah, I mean,
Put it to the test.
Oh yeah, we'll put it to the test. We did the D-Max store already. It passed, but I'm
Yeah.
sure yours will pass. No problem. It kind of went. All my tie rods were. I lowered the keys. Everything was straight. It's still with that idle arm that I replaced it with, the Moog problem solver we were just talking about. I launched and it's still boom, boom, boom. You know.
Do
And
you
it
still
was.
have factory tie rods or aftermarket?
No, I have aftermarket tie rods.
Yeah, you
So
can
it
do
launched,
those.
and it's, you know, obviously tires are grabbing, but it felt like almost like trying to, like the opposite.
yeah, when that Centerlink was moving forward or backward, the toe was changing.
And so it's fighting itself the
Yeah.
whole time.
Right. Sounds like a handful.
Wow, I'm gonna.
Yeah, we have a billet Centerlink. We call it the Extreme Duty Centerlink and tie rod kit. Okay, that converts. There's a couple things that does. For one, it's you have a bigger, stiffer Centerlink. But for two, we're converting that inner tie rod from a ball and socket joint like stock. You're converting it to a radial loaded joint like the outer tie rod is. You know what I'm saying? So your outer tie rod.
It goes down at it.
So you got an outer tie rod. Axial loaded is this way. Radial loaded is this way. Okay, so your outer tie rod, it's obvious to see it's radial loaded. But your inner ball joint is a ball and socket stock.
Mm-hmm. Determined.
So you literally have this socket and you got the ball with the stud coming out of it. And so you have free articulation all over, but you're trying to pull it apart. Okay? Now, when you turn, one is trying to push together and the other one's trying to pull apart. Okay? But by going with a billet Centerlink, like our system, the Extreme Duty Centerlink and tie rod kit, you have this kind of joint replacing the inner ball and socket joint.
Oh, I did not know you guys.
So
did that.
instead of an axial loaded joint, because if I have a joint this way, I'm trying to pull it apart, pushing it together or pulling it apart. This way, because that's axial, because you have an axis, right?
Yeah.
There's a ball stud in here and then you got your stud. So that's axial load. But if I go in from the side load, that's radial load, okay? So two different kinds of loads. That's this joint is stronger in a radial load. So when you go billet Centerlink, and the inner tie rod is converted from ball and socket or axial, converted to this style, which is gonna be radial loaded, you got a stronger tie rod.
I have never seen that. I didn't know you guys had that.
Yeah. Do we make it out of fancy material and engrave it and all this stuff? No, nobody can see it under there. So we make it pretty to the point. It's less expensive than most of the others.
Yeah.
It's just value, Now,
Same with this truck.
does everybody need it? No, but, obviously you must have something like that on yours. Yeah.
4%.
Yeah.
When we launched this truck, actually, funny story. It went right.
Yeah.
Being on the Coilover Kit, it does not like from dead stop.
It
That's
goes
for
right.
sure.
What year is it?
It's a 2019.
And it has a lift kit or a leveling kit? Or?
It's got your guys' 4 to 6 inch lift with Performance Diesel's Coilover Kit.
Okay, so, yeah, another issue is toe change through suspension cycle.
Yep.
So, if the front of that truck comes up, when you're launching and toe changes, if toe goes out, and now you're towed out, it's gonna wanna pull. Wherever the traction is the best, whichever tire, it's going to want to pull that way, right? So yeah, you're fighting stuff. Stock geometry on the newer trucks has the best geometry. When you go to a lift kit, sometimes you lose the most desirable Ackerman, okay? And for example, on a newer half ton, if you do a lift kit, you have to shorten the tie rod so much to clear a tire that now your Ackerman isn't that good. So when you hang sharper turns, your inner tire isn't turned as sharp as it needs to be, and you'll get a little squeal on the ground when you're turning sharp. Stock truck doesn't do it because you got longer tie rods and the geometry's proper and you have good Ackerman. Older trucks, they didn't think about that stuff as much, older 88 to 98, maybe some of the 01 to 10 as well, but when you do a lift kit, you sometimes are sacrificing some of that Ackerman. You might have good toe, meaning no toe change through the majority of the suspension cycle, so that's good. But if you get any and you got a fat tire on there and you got that much power, like stuff's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, it's not designed to do that.
Yeah.
But
So
it's fun.
It's just a spicy toe pick
Sure.
at this point.
Sure.
He says that's his toe pig.
What are you towing? Yeah, hauling ass.
The other
So you
truck.
snagged, put the other truck on.
He has another fast truck, so he tows that one without one.
Yeah.
Dealing with lift kits. When somebody else comes out with a lift kit, you like analyze their lift kit?
Depends. Sometimes
'Cause I have a question about a lift kit that I don't have, but that I've seen a lot of bad things about.
Well, I'll give you an example. So one of the production workers here, one of the team members here, has I don't know what year it is, it's 2019 and up half ton, it's out in the parking lot, and it has a different brand lift kit on it. I noticed that they didn't have to shorten the tie rods a ton. So I'm like, well, why? How did they do? So am I over there looking at it? Yeah, I'm over there looking at it. And I see why. You have to run a 20-inch wheel on their kit. Well, I want to be able to run an 18-inch wheel, so I have to shorten the tie rod. So there's pros and cons with different kits. They have an approach where, hey, you got to run a 20. I'm an off-road guy. I like 18s. Not everybody wants a 20. I like a 35 on an 18 better than a 35 on a 20. 37, okay, I'll go with 20. You got a lot of sidewall, you get a good ride. Do I look at that kind of stuff? Yeah, and I see why they did it, and I go, okay. Pros and cons. Pros and cons. We're each going to do it a little different unless you get a copycat that's just going to knock one off, and they don't know why. So SEMA, pros and cons. I don't feel like it's the same. In 2019 was my last SEMA. We're going again this year, but we didn't do a SEMA since 2019, and it wasn't because of the pandemic. I was just done. It just turned into an overpriced car show as far as I was concerned. The amount of money we spent versus the traffic we were getting, the traffic was fine. It's just you need quality traffic that are coming to start up and do business with you. Not, hey, I'm exhibiting at the booth down the way. I just bought this. What do you got? That was most of the questions we got. So I decided, hey, I'd be better off spending that money, that money at SEMA. I'd be better off spending that visiting our dealers and giving them support. That didn't happen because the pandemic came along and whatnot. But this year, since we were acquired by Randy's Worldwide, we're having a big joint booth with all the brands. I mean, they bought Carly, they bought Icon, Dynatrack, they got Cognito. They're putting together a group of the best brands that are doing, that are in their genre. So they're not interested in, the cheap import crappy brands, and that's kind of why it was good to partner up with them.
Do you think you'll sell Icon shocks with your kit in the future?
I'm going to sell Cognito shocks.
Gotcha.
We're already working with Icon because we're brothers now. We're already working with Icon on Cognito shocks. They'll be built at Icon, but they are branded Cognito. They are our design. They're our tuning. They look bitchin'. We're not going to replace the other brands with this. We're still going to sell the Fox, the King, the Elka, but we're going to have another one to bring in. We'll have better margins on it, so we'll have to be able to offer dealers better margins. Right now, our dealer margins are a little less when you get to the 2.5-inch shocks. It's because the shocks are a big part of the kit, and they're expensive. But now we have a lot better margins on those when we'll have the Cognito brand, and we'll be in charge of taking care of the warranty stuff all in one place, rather than if you have an issue with a shock that that came in a Cognito kit that was a different brand shock, you know, having to kind of go, well, Cognito, what do I do? Okay, well, you got to do this. So then they got to go over there. No, we handle it all at that point. So it gives us better control over the product and the support. Now, here's one of the reasons we partnered with Randy's, okay? They have a DC in Kentucky, distribution center in Kentucky. So we have product sitting in Kentucky right now. We're soon going to have product in Texas. We're soon going to have product in Washington. So we're going to be a lot closer.
So if we buy straight from y'all, we'll get it quicker than.
Yes. So what I would do, okay, because Randy's has their own sales team, that might work actually. So we'll figure out how to do that. But I think we can get you product in 1 to 2 days because you're in Georgia,
South Carolina, or right on
South Carolina. Yeah. So you're, you know, that's the right side of the country. So I think it'd be there within 2 days, and you can do that. Meyer is working great for you. Hey, no problem. We'll have other options here as well. So we have, as of 2 months ago, we have product in Kentucky now.
That wraps up our visit to Cognito Motorsports here in California. Huge thanks to Justin Lambert for taking the time to share his history of the company and answer some of your most burning questions. It's always incredible to see the passion and craftsmanship that goes into making the parts that so many of us rely on. Cognito has come a long way since it started, and the dedication to innovation and quality is clear in everything they do. Whether you're looking to level up your truck's performance or just curious about the parts you're putting on your rig, there's no doubt Cognito is at the top of the game. If you enjoyed the behind the scenes look at the deep dive into Cognito's history, be sure to drop a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content, installs, and all things trucks. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you're looking for the best truck parts, head over to JW Motorsports Co. Get your Cognito parts there or other Duramax related merchandise.